As far as video games go, every so often there's that one game everyone has high hopes for, and it's all about waiting for launch day. Well, Silksong is finally here. Chances are, if you're watching this, you might already have some clue as what to expect, and you want to know just a little bit more. As a quick disclaimer, I've not finished the game yet myself, nor did I play any prior builds of the game that were taken to game showcases around the world in the build up to its launch. Thus, a lot of what you're hearing may very well be me echoing sentiments shared across the internet, despite me being none the wiser, as these are my initial impressions to go off of and not much else. To start things off, yes, Silksong has proven it's worth the wait, as everything the good people at Team Cherry were able to come up with is something truly magical. Whether you're personally interested in Hollow Knight boiled down to its Metroidvania gameplay, or the vibes of its world and characters, you're going to feel right at home jumping back into another adventure. This time around, we aren't in Hollow Nest anymore, as our character Hornet has traveled outside of the region and finds their way to the land of Farloom, complete with its own locales, enemies, and other adventures separate from the original game. Exploration is of course non-linear again, as many areas, especially in the early game, can be accessed without requiring you to earn new abilities for Hornet's toolkit, making the experience feel truly open depending on how the player chooses to go about exploration. While certain paths will be noticeably easier to traverse as you earn these new powers, you aren't streamlined to find them in order to progress. Combat is fast and fluid, as Hornet's toolkit can be adjusted to fit your playstyle over the course of the game. Her options are different from that of the Knight, and will take some time for players to get used to, as the game doesn't waste any time throwing you in, expecting you to grasp these new movement options fairly quickly. It isn't a tedious process, of course. Practice makes perfect, and once you got the basics down, you realize just how much you have at your disposal going forward. In fact, while making this review, the footage you're seeing on screen was me starting a second save file, and found myself dumbfounded by how quickly I was able to progress after having struggled all the way on my original save when I was playing it. On the topic of new options that differentiate Silksong from the original, unlike Hollow Knight, which gave you your standard moves that could be tweaked a little bit depending on the equipable badges you have, Silksong takes it a little bit further, giving Hornet something akin to different builds that you can swap between at benches after finding them in the game world. For instance, should the player attack downwards in midair, she usually lunges at an angle and heads off in either direction to the left or right. But once you find another build of hers that you can get elsewhere in the game world, it instead gets replaced with the ability to make a clean swipe directly below you at the cost of kind of pausing in midair almost, as she then just falls down like normal without any kind of directional input at play. Other differences can include giving you extra meter for Hornet if you continue to wail on enemies after healing for a period of time, unless you get hit. Attacking an enemy normally will give you your energy back, but if you have this other build that I'm referring to, you will get it back upon hitting the enemy, but not just that. White orbs will then fly out of the enemy's body, with subsequent hits giving you even more that'll float around the environment for a little bit, and you can pick them up to get that much more back until they despawn. While I'm sure most people will simply find the one that suits them the best and refrain from experimenting, the options are a welcome adjustment to the core gameplay experience that allows replayability to try new things with subsequent playthroughs, if not just wanting to experiment on the fly naturally. I will say, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Silksong to somebody completely blind unless they're already familiar with the Metroidvania subgenre, as the game is noticeably more different than its predecessor at a first glance. Even with my experience of playing the original game cover to cover, for the first time in a while, I felt like a disoriented child struggling to get my bearings during the game's opening moments. I got better in time, but would worry for someone that might find it hard to get into it just due to the noticeable learning curve that the original lacks. That's not a knock on its quality, of course, as I'm having a great time personally getting slapped around and fighting for my life in the game's world that's testing me. Outside of progressing in the main story and its combat is the side content, which is a bit more involved this time around. In Hollow Knight, side content tended to be a bit more cryptic like games of yore, that didn't exactly hold your hand to remind you who to speak to or where to go, or even if it existed in the first place. Now, we have a typical job system set up in the game that players can return to in order to accept and subsequently fulfill various quests, as well as the traditional practice of finding characters across the game's locales that ask for your assistance upon finding them. While these quests don't hold your hand the entire time, they do give you a clear objective that you can remind yourself of at any time in the pause menu. That doesn't take away from the core experience, mind you, but it is an interesting take considering what came before. Lastly, I would like to mention the visuals, as they do deserve their respective flowers. During my playthrough of Silksong, I was of course playing on the Switch 2 edition, which is very nice. That said, what you've been seeing on screen this entire time is actually the Switch 1 version. The visuals do not take a significant hit when playing on Switch 1, from what I've experienced so far in any case, and the team has been true to their word in the enhancements of the Switch 2 being mostly relegated to subtle flourishes that make things pop. I'd recommend getting it on either system, as currently buying either version of the game gives you the subsequent Switch version of the other machine at no additional cost. So getting the Switch 1 version also nets you the Switch 2 version, and vice versa. With everything in mind, I give Silksong a 9 out of 10. I'm fairly confident that as I go further in, I'll find even more charm in the game that I can laugh at myself later for not giving it a full 10. Here's to Silksong. We've all been waiting for this for a long time, and if you'll excuse me, I really gotta play more. Till next time, everybody.